The ship's clock continues its steady, rhythmic pulse, a haunting contrast to the outside universe where galaxies ignite and fade in the time it takes to draw a breath. Through the viewport. However, entire galaxies ignite and fade in the time it takes to draw a breath, a silent, roaring testament to a future he will never reach. The hum of the life support system was a steady, predictable comfort in the void. Inside the cockpit, Kenji watched the numbers scroll across his primary display, each digit a testament to the elegant, terrifying precision of General Relativity. His ship, the Stargazer, held its position in a careful, pre-calculated arc, a mote of dust dancing on the edge of a cosmic drain. The data flowing from the gravimetric sensors was flawless, confirming the predicted warping of spacetime curvature down to the 5th decimal place. He logged the latest telemetry string, his gloved fingers moving with practiced efficiency across the console. A knot of ice formed in his stomach, a cold counterpoint to the warmth of the cabin's recycled air. Every successful measurement was another nail, another piece of evidence confirming that the equations which describe his predicament were inescapable laws. He ran a diagnostic on the communications array for the 10th time in an hour, a useless ritual of denial. The hardware was perfect, the signal strong and clear. Yet, the latency to Earth had increased again, this time by a handful of nanoseconds that felt as heavy as centuries. The math was pure, a language of cosmic certainty that offered no room for hope. His trajectory was a living demonstration of the Schwarzschild metric, a perfect fall along the steepest curve of the universe. He had been trained for this, had spent years studying the abstract geometries of Penrose diagrams that flattened infinity onto a single page. But seeing the diagram of his own future rendered in cold blue light on the secondary monitor, a world line arcing inexorably toward a final, one-dimensional point, was a level of intensity the simulators could never replicate. A yellow alert flashed, pulling his attention. Proximity warning, innermost stable circular orbit. It was not a surprise, merely a formal announcement of a fate he had already calculated. He watched the comms light blink, signaling an incoming message from a world that was now drifting away from him in time as well as space. The voice of mission control crackled through the speakers, strangely tinny and rushed, the words compressed by the growing temporal gulf. Kenji, your biometric readings are elevated. Report status. He keyed the transmitter, the simple act feeling momentous, final. Control, this is Kenji, he said, his own voice a stranger's, unnervingly calm. All systems are green. The lie felt small and meaningless against the backdrop of the truth unfolding on his screens. He knew that by the time his words crossed the ever-widening chasm back to Earth, he would be long past the point where any report, any status, truly mattered. The ship drifted on, silent and obedient, carrying him toward the measured, mathematical end of everything. The crossing of the innermost stable circular orbit was not an event of alarms or violent shudders, but one of profound and unnerving silence. A cold dread seeped into Kenji's bones as the ship's thrusters fired with futile precision, their maximum output rendered meaningless by the steepening curvature of the abyss. The Stargazer was no longer in orbit. It was now committed to the fall, a leaf caught in an inescapable current. The formal designation for this final leg of his journey was the Event Horizon Approach, a clinical term for becoming a ghost. He unstrapped himself from the command chair, the sensation of weightlessness a cruel mockery of freedom, and drifted to the main viewport. The console, with its cascade of data confirming the unyielding truth of the Schwarzschild metric, no longer held his interest. The numbers were merely a prelude, an academic description of the horror he was now to witness firsthand. He magnified the view, bypassing the distorted star field to focus on a single faint point of bluish-white light, the distant sun that warmed Earth. The phenomenon began subtly, a slow corruption of the familiar. The star's light, which should have been a stable beacon, started to lose its intensity, its color deepening from brilliant white to a jaundiced yellow, then to a bruised orange. It was the gravitational redshift the textbooks had promised, a stretching of light waves fighting their way out of a gravity well that was rapidly becoming absolute. The star was not changing. His perception of its time was. The universe outside was beginning to run, and he was being left behind. Through the telescope's highest magnification, the vague shape of Earth resolved into a shimmering sphere. What he saw there broke something deep within his psyche. He did not see continents or oceans in their familiar dance. He saw flashes of light that were not storms, but the birth and death of civilizations. The sudden bloom of megastructures that webbed the planet before crumbling to dust. The green of the land browning and returning in pulses too rapid for a single mind to process. He was watching millennia unfold in the time it took for his own heart to complete a single steady beat. A silent, accelerated audience with all the ages of humanity. He finally understood. This was not a journey through space to a physical destination. It was a finality, an inevitability defined in the equations of general relativity. He was sealed within the time prison, a cell whose bars were not steel, but the very spacetime curvature he had set out to measure. The crushing gravity of the singularity below was a distant, almost merciful prospect compared to the immediate, profound, psychological isolation of watching everything he had ever known and everything that would ever come from it turn to ash in an instant. Inside the cockpit, there was no longer a sense of falling, only of suspension. A strange and absolute stillness had taken hold of Kenji, a state the mission planners had clinically labeled the forward time lock, where his personal flow of time had slowed to a near infinitesimal crawl. The quiet dread that had accompanied him across the innermost stable circular orbit had now sublimated into a vast empty peace. The final acceptance of a prisoner who has come to understand the architecture of his cell. His own thoughts felt slow and deliberate, each one an eternity in the making. The light from Earth's star had long since stretched into an invisible radio wave, a final fading whisper from a home that had likely ceased to exist eons ago. Kenji had turned his gaze outward to the grander spectacle. The viewport now showed him the life cycle of the Milky Way, not as an astronomer would see it over generations, but as a god might witness it in a single, careless glance. Stars bloomed from nebulae like flashbulbs, their furious, brief lives of fusion ending in silent, expanding shells of light and matter. The galaxy's spiral arms, once so majestic and slow, churned and blended, their structure dissolving in a mad cosmic dance. This was the ultimate expression of general relativity, a physical deformation of reality so profound that he had become the sole, stationary witness to the universe's frantic sprint towards its own demise. His journey, defined by the cold mathematics of the Schwarzschild metric and the abstract lines of Penrose diagrams, had delivered him to this impossible vantage point. He was the last audience member for the end of everything, a solitary mind trapped in the amber of extreme spacetime curvature. The loneliness of it was a pressure far greater than any gravity. He watched as other galaxies, their light experiencing an even more extreme gravitational redshift, careened across the blackness. They merged with the fading remnants of his own, their collisions not cataclysmic, but beautiful, like droplets of ink bleeding into one another on a dark sheet. Then, As trillions of years whipped past his viewport, the generative fire of the cosmos began to cool. The birth of new stars became a rarity, then an impossibility. The last of the red dwarfs, the universe's most stubborn candles, began to flicker and die, surrendering their meager warmth to the encroaching entropy. The darkness that followed was not merely the absence of light, it was the absence of possibility. The cosmos settled into a final, stable state of cold and quiet. The protons themselves would decay in time, he remembered from his studies, but he would not be here to see that final, subtle dissolution. His own end would be far quieter. He floated in the command chair, a ghost in a machine, perpetually falling into a black hole it would never technically reach from the perspective of the universe he had just seen die. He understood, with a clarity that bordered on serenity, that the crushing singularity below was irrelevant. The true nature of the descent was the total divergence of his timeline from the rest of the cosmos, a final observation of a universe he was no longer a part of. Kenji's final moments remind us that the most profound loneliness isn't found in the vastness of space, but in the abyss of time. His fate, to watch galaxies burn out while his own clock remains eternally frozen, is an isolation more absolute than any physical distance. It answers the terrible question of what it means to see a future you can never reach. In the end, you simply watch the rest of the universe leave you behind. If exploring the beautiful and terrifying frontiers of physics is why you're here, thank you for being a part of TECH DISSECT Official. We believe the best conversations happen with you in the comments below. With that in mind, I have to ask, if you were Kenji, would you have accepted the mission, knowing that the price of ultimate knowledge was to witness the end of everything you ever knew? Thank you for joining us for this descent. We'll see you for the next one. But Kenji's story leaves a chilling paradox in its wake. If a black hole terminates a world line, what remains of the information that once defined its journey?